Salutations! In the last video we discovered the three primary components of the human person, the body, the thumeticon and the logisticon, highlighting their functions and their fates. In this video we will elaborate on the theory of metempsychosis, that is, the transmigration of the logisticon from state to state, including through multiple successive biological vehicles. "Hold it right there, sir," the recurring gag character interjects. "I'm willing to accept that some of the mental effects from before might be real, but this is preposterous. If there were evidence of this, there would be whole research departments dedicated to studying it." Ian P. Stevenson, who was Professor of Neurobehavioral Sciences and Psychiatry at the University of Virginia, investigated a vast number of individual cases all over the world of children who claimed to have memories from previous lives. With each investigation, if the child could produce no useful information, the case was thrown out. If the child's supposed memories were not consistent with the facts about a real dead person from before they were born, the case was thrown out. If there was any serious possibility that the child could have gotten the information by ordinary means, such as if their family knew about the dead person or the dead person was famous, the case was thrown out. What was left over was a small fraction of the overall cases, but what it represented was a number of cases too large to be considered a statistical fluke, in which young children could recall accurate information about dead people which they had no possible way of knowing, and said children insisted that the information came from the personal memories of a previous life. These cases also occurred among children who were raised in cultures where reincarnation is not a belief, meaning they were not influenced by local culture or religion. This research continues in the University of Virginia's Division of Perceptual Studies under the purview of Jim B. Tucker. It was reviewed favourably by Scientific American in 2013. According to award-winning materials scientist Doris Kuhlman-Wilsdorf, the statistical probability that reincarnation does in fact occur is so overwhelming that cumulatively the evidence is not inferior to that of most, if not all, branches of science.
Think about that. Think about that.
I will leave a link in the description for a presentation by Tucker in which he describes, among other things, one of the most compelling individual cases to come out of these studies to date. Obviously, this kind of evidence was also available in ancient times, and was much more readily believed because those people were already convinced of the imperishability of consciousness. Among the Greeks, metempsychosis was taught as a matter of fact by Orpheus, Pherecydes, Empedocles, Pythagoras, and of course Plato. The Orphics and Pythagoreans were major movements during the Roman era. The Roman poets Virgil, Ennius, and Lucretius all mention the concept in their works. It was also a major part of Hermeticism, a mystical and philosophical movement from Greco-Roman Egypt that had a massive influence on Western occult philosophy, science, and alchemy, although the idea was stripped away by Christians and Muslims when they adopted the Hermetic arts into their own paradigms. Looking to the north, we find that the Celtic Druids also taught metempsychosis. According to Julius Caesar, the Gaulish warriors had no fear of death because they did not identify with their physical bodies and knew that they would merely pass from one form to another. The same is found among Germanic tribes. Appian of Alexandria said that the German warriors also did not fear death on account of their belief in rebirth. Direct evidence for this is seen in Old Norse sources. 3 poems in the Poetic Edda mention the passing of life from one body to another, and so does one of the sagas in the Flateyjar book. This was also believed among the Slavic heathens, as attested by the persistence of the belief in later folklore. I will leave a link in the description to a video that has the pertinent quotes for anyone interested in the Slavic religion. As the viewer probably already knows, the transmigration of the soul is a major part of the Indian religions of Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. It is also found in the Chinese philosophy of Taoism and the historical Persian religion of Manichaeanism, as well as a plethora of native tribal religions among the Tartars, Eskimos, Native Americans, and Australian Aborigines, all of whom also professed a belief in multiple souls with different functions, paralleling what we have said in the previous video. Even among the Abrahamic religions, sects that propose transmigration have arisen numerous times, some of which persist to this day. The Jewish Kabbalah teaches transmigration under the name Gilgul. Hasidic Jews believe it as part of their religion, and it is also influential in Western esoteric tradition. In Christianity, Gnostic sects such as the Sethians and Cathars taught transmigration as a point of doctrine, possibly inherited from the Neoplatonists. The Bulgarian Christian sect called the Bogomils also believed in transmigration. Rosicrucianism, an esoteric, mystical movement within Christianity, also agrees. It is accepted by the Middle Eastern Druze religion, as well as some small denominations of Shia Islam. Demographic surveys from contemporary times show that the belief in transmigration is widespread in the West, despite mainstream Christianity vehemently opposing it. According to Gallup and Nordic Psychology, roughly 20% of Westerners, including 10% of people who call themselves Christians, accept transmigration. This figure rises to around 40% in the Baltic countries, which remained heathen for far longer than Western Europe did. In short, across all times and cultures, metempsychosis is commonly accepted, except when suppressed by the imposition of another doctrine opposed to it by force.
And they would have the Christian groups complain.
All of this raises the fundamental question of what circumstance causes the logisticon to pass through transient states when by its basic nature it belongs in union with the monad as the prime emanation.
Let me ask you this, where did you get that body? That one you're in right now?
Plotinus has this to say: "What can it be that brought the souls to forget the monad, and, though members of the divine and entirety of that world, to ignore at once both themselves and it? The evil that has overcome them has its source in self-will, in the entry into the sphere of progress, and in the primal differentiation with the desire for self-ownership. They conceived a pleasure in this freedom and largely indulged their own motion. Thus they hurried down the wrong path, and ultimately, drifting further and further, they came to lose even the thought of their origin in the divine." The ancient Greek philosopher Empedocles also said that our severance from the One is the result of an erroneous but nonetheless conscious choice.
Was getting caught part of your plan?
And the ultimate goal of the logisticon is to re-establish unity through purification. The Neoplatonists called the state of reunification henosis, and it was the ultimate goal of the mystical practices established by Iamblichus. The Vedic, Hermetic, Gnostic, and Manichaean explanations are all very similar, and I will leave a link in the description for a video about the descent of the Atman from unity into the material world according to the Hindu religion. Likewise, our choices during our current lives affect the future state of our logisticon into what mode it passes upon death, be it corporeal or incorporeal, human or animal, daimonic or natural, of better or worse quality. In Phaedo, Plato's depiction of Socrates speaks of the transition of the logisticon into various organic vehicles according to their conscious actions and desires. And in the final part of Plato's Republic, Socrates recounts the mythical story of a soldier called who had an out-of-body experience after being slain on the battlefield before returning to life just as his body was about to be burned. Went alongside the spirits of the dead and witnessed them either ascending into heaven if they had been virtuous or descending into Tartarus if they had been evil. Their rewards and punishments were not infinite as in Abrahamic faith, but were proportional to their deeds.
Well, this has been fun, or painful, depending on your definition of words.
After this, they all returned to the neutral underworld and were made to draw lots and choose their next lives. One man chooses the life of a tyrant, two blinded by his greed to see that this life also involved devouring his own children. The great prophet Orpheus chose to be born as a swan. Ajax and Agamemnon, heroes of the Trojan War, chose to become predatory beasts.
You know, it turns out he's not a werewolf, he's just Greek.
Epeius, the builder of the great wooden horse, chose the life of a craftswoman. Thersites the jester became a monkey. From here we also see the actions and desires of the logisticon in one creature affecting the nature of the next creature it inhabits. Here we have covered the presence of consciousness in physical creatures. In the next video we will be covering other transient states that consciousness can pass through, the kinds of entities this produces, and the spheres these entities inhabit. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.
Arrogant, pseudo-intellectual, know-it-all with your pseudo-intellectual hair.